Why is the stock market breaking records while your bank account is bleeding to death? Beneath the flashing green numbers on Wall Street lies a dark, hidden truth. The financial elite are actively using a newly engineered banking trick to siphon the remaining purchasing power straight out of your pocket. They are betting you won't notice the massive trap being laid behind closed doors right now. But once this structural trap snaps shut, there is no turning back. But wait. Before we begin, please subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my essential stuff. Comment, "I subscribe," below, and I will personally welcome you to our community. With that said, let's get started. If you've ever looked at a news headline screaming about a booming economy, then looked down at your grocery receipt and felt a pit in your stomach, this is for you. You aren't losing your mind. You are just watching the final stage of a game that has been rigged from the top down. To understand exactly how we got here, you have to look at Arthur. He's 69 years old, living in a quiet neighborhood just outside Toledo, Ohio. Arthur did everything our society told him was right. He put in 40 grueling years at an automotive plant, watched his 401k crawl upward, and retired believing his $350,000 nest egg meant absolute security. He calculated his expenses perfectly based on historical averages. He factored in his modest pension, his social security, and his savings, assuming he could comfortably glide through his golden years. But the turning point didn't happen during a massive stock market crash. It didn't happen because of a sudden medical emergency or a bad investment. It happened on a random morning at his kitchen table. Arthur opened his mail to find a devastating 35% spike in his local property taxes, followed by a surging healthcare premium. Within months, his local grocery store adjusted prices yet again, making a standard week of food cost double what it did just a few years prior. The math simply didn't work anymore. His chest tightened. Today, Arthur didn't wake up to fish with his grandkids. He woke up at 4:30 a.m. to walk a cold, concrete graveyard shift as a security guard, his joints aching under harsh fluorescent lights, just to keep his home. Arthur thinks he just ran into bad luck. He blames himself for not saving more, for not being smarter with his budget. But he has no idea he is a calculated casualty of a much larger, global shell game. Right now, the Federal Reserve has locked interest rates at a crushing 3.5% to 3.75%. They claim they are fighting inflation, telling the public that the economy is finally stabilizing. Yet, the current data tells a completely different story. The Consumer Price Index has quietly re-accelerated to a staggering 4.2%, driven by massive trade frictions and ongoing Middle East energy shocks. The elite are keeping interest rates high enough to choke out small businesses and make homeownership impossible for young families, while consumer prices continue to erase middle-class cash reserves. According to the latest 2026 World Economic Outlook, published by the IMF, global growth is decelerating precisely because these elevated macro pressures are draining real-term purchasing power from the bottom 80% of households. Arthur's retirement didn't vanish into thin air. It was systematically transferred. And that transfer was just validated by a massive announcement the public completely misunderstood. In June 2026, the Federal Reserve delivered a highly publicized, reassuring message: America's 32 largest banks are completely resilient, successfully passing their annual stress tests and absorbing over $700 billion in projected losses. The mainstream media celebrated this as a triumph of regulatory oversight, proof that the structural collapses of previous banking crises could never happen again. But it was a complete illusion. The stress tests only measure the crises regulators choose to model, like standard, predictable recessions or linear drops in equity markets. They completely ignore the catastrophic ticking time bomb of commercial real estate defaults and hidden corporate debt layers currently sitting on the books. Commercial properties in major metropolitan areas are sitting half-empty, their underlying loans getting rolled over at these new, higher interest rates that businesses cannot afford to pay. In fact, directly behind this announcement, regulatory bodies quietly introduced new proposals to actually lower bank capital requirements under the guise of maintaining liquidity. They are actively making the banking system more fragile while telling you everything is perfectly safe. While the banking elite protect their own scorecards, the corporate world is using this environment to execute a brutal maneuver against ordinary workers to keep their stock prices artificially inflated. Look at Elena. Elena is 64 years old and spent 15 dedicated years as a senior logistics analyst for a global supply chain firm. She watched her corporate employer post record-breaking quarterly gains on television, feeling proud that her hard work contributed to that success and confident that her job was secure. Then came the turning point. On a Friday afternoon, she received a generic calendar invite for an unannounced corporate alignment meeting. In a chilly, automated 5-minute Zoom call, a corporate recording informed Elena that her entire department was eliminated due to operational optimization and structural realignment. Her screen went black. Her knees felt like hot knives as she tried to stand up, realizing her healthcare, her routine, and her livelihood were gone in 300 seconds. The very next morning, she opened the Wall Street Journal only to see her former employer proudly launching a brand new $5 billion stock buyback program to enrich its top board members and elevate its earnings per share. This is the reality of the corporate buyback scrape. Over 72% of corporate net income among major firms is currently diverted exclusively to artificial stock manipulation and elite dividends, leaving less than 8% for employee wage growth, safety equipment, or actual domestic infrastructure. When a company buys back its own shares, it doesn't create a better product, it doesn't hire more people, and it doesn't help the economy. It simply reduces the supply of stock, forcing the price up, which triggers massive multi-million-dollar bonuses for the executives, whose compensation packages are tied to share performance. They privatize the historic gains, but a bill of this size cannot just disappear. The elite have successfully passed the check to the public ledger. Welcome to the sovereign debt handoff. When major corporate structures and over-leveraged banks begin to fracture under the weight of their own financial engineering, they don't face the consequences of the free market. The government steps in with quiet, multi-billion-dollar backstops, emergency lending facilities, and specialized tax breaks. But governments don't have their own pool of wealth. Every single dollar used to prop up a failing, mismanaged system is added directly to the national debt. The national debt isn't just an abstract number on a digital clock in Manhattan that you can choose to ignore. It is a ticking tax time bomb that manifests as a slow, grinding decay of your everyday life. It is the exact reason your local roads are disintegrating into potholes, your community schools are facing brutal budget cuts, your public utilities are failing, and your auto and home insurance premiums have inexplicably jumped 20% in a single year. The system is systematically starving public infrastructure and extracting wealth from local municipalities just to pay the compounding interest on the massive debts run up by the elite. If you feel like you are working twice as hard, taking on extra shifts, paying higher taxes, and watching your community decline all at the exact same time, you are experiencing the sovereign debt handoff in real time. But the trap goes even deeper than simple debt and corporate greed. The next layer of this mechanism is the death of cash and the subtle transition into digital surveillance capital. Over the past 12 months, central banks globally have been accelerating trials for digital currencies under the banner of convenience and security. They tell you it will eliminate fraud and speed up transactions. What they don't tell you is that a programmable currency allows the elite to dictate exactly how, when, and where you can spend your money. If the economy gets too hot, they can implement negative interest rates, meaning your savings will literally shrink if you don't spend them fast enough to stimulate their corporate markets. If you buy goods they deem unsustainable or politically inconvenient, your access can be restricted with a single line of code. This isn't a conspiracy theory about the distant future, it is the logical conclusion of an economic model that has run out of real growth. When an economy can no longer expand through productivity, innovation, and rising wages, the elite can only maintain their wealth by increasing their control over the existing pool of resources. They must financialize every aspect of human existence, turning your home, your car, your data, and your future wages into complex derivatives that they can trade among themselves. Think about the housing market. For generations, buying a home was the ultimate wealth-building tool for the middle class. You bought a house, paid off the mortgage over 30 years, and passed that equity down to your children. Today, massive private equity firms are using billions of dollars in ultra-cheap institutional loans to outbid young families on starter homes across the country. They don't buy these homes to flip them, they buy them to hold them forever, turning America into a permanent rental nation. When a private equity firm owns your neighborhood, your rent doesn't track local wages, it tracks the profit expectations of Wall Street algorithms. You are blocked from building equity, forced to pay a permanent subscription fee just to have a roof over your head, while the wealth generated by your local community is vacuumed up and deposited into offshore accounts. The exact same thing is happening to the global trade architecture. The sudden reacceleration of tariffs, export restrictions, and protectionist policies aren't designed to bring manufacturing jobs back to your hometown. They are designed to protect the domestic monopolies of megacorporations from foreign competition, allowing them to raise prices on everyday goods without fear of being undercut. You are told it's a matter of national security, but when you look at the balance sheets, the only things being secured are the profit margins of the top 1%. You cannot afford to be a passive passenger in an economy designed to consume you. The old advice of working hard, saving your money in a local bank account, and investing blindly in a standard index fund is no longer just outdated, it is actively dangerous. If you want to survive this shift, you have to change your strategy immediately. Stop leaving your emergency capital sitting inside a standard checking account yielding a pathetic fraction of a percent. That is financial surrender. You are voluntarily allowing inflation to burn away your hard work. Transition your capital into short-term treasury bills that offer immediate liquidity, or focus on tangible, cash-flow-positive hard assets. Look toward land, toward energy, toward small, hyper-localized businesses that provide essential goods that people absolutely cannot live without, no matter how bad the macroeconomy gets. Acquire assets anchored in the physical world, things that cannot be wiped out by a central bank memo, deleted by a server malfunction, or printed into absolute oblivion by a desperate political class. Build parallel systems of security. Focus on reducing your dependence on their over-leveraged infrastructure. Strengthen your local networks, eliminate variable interest debt that can weaponize interest rate spikes against you, and treat your financial literacy as a matter of survival rather than a hobby. The curtain has been pulled back, and the illusion is completely cracked. The system is not broken, it is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is extracting wealth from the productive economy and concentrating it at the very top, leaving ordinary families to pick up the pieces and pay the compounding bill. So, let me ask you a straight question. Will you keep your wealth inside a game where the rules change every single time you start to win, or are you finally ready to take your capital off their table and protect your family? Tell us exactly what you're doing to prepare down in the comments right now. Let's start a conversation.